Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to the Wednesday, August 2nd special meeting, the Committee of the Whole for Planning and Public Works. Council members present are Council members Carson, Fields, Kahn, Forsyth, and myself, Council member Stewart. We have 7 items on today's agenda. 4 items we would normally expect to see in this committee and a few extra friends due to the schedule changes for August. In order to make sure that action items are addressed first, item number 7 will now come between items 2 and 3. So we'll take a quick pause there to get everyone acquainted. The first item on our agenda tonight is the Rose Hill Northeast 97th Street Annexation Notice of Intent. And we are joined by folks from our planning department. We've got Deputy Director Seraphy Allen and Audra Cardenas joining us at the table. Welcome. Should just come up immediately.
All right, good afternoon. It is my pleasure to introduce Audra Cardenas, who is going to be talking about this annexation. She'll also be helping distinguish this annexation project versus a different one. But with that, I'll turn it over to her.
Hi, good afternoon, Council. So this annexation is on the Rose Hill neighborhood. It's not the one for the RCC. Okay. So this annexation notice of intent is for the Northeast 97th Street potential annexation area in the Rose Hill neighborhood. The area consists of 13 tax parcels and 13.5 acres. This area would pursue annexation under the annexation by petition process. Staff recommends that Council accept the notice of intent so that the annexation process can start. Accepting the notice of intent allows the annexation to move forward to the petition phase. It does not commit the City Council to annex the proposed territory when the petition is presented to it. Staff recommends no geographic modifications to the proposed area, adopting R5 as the zoning and requiring that the newly annexed territory accepts its equitable share of the city's bonded indebtedness. The city received this notice on July 19th, and according to state law, Council must set a date within 60 days to determine if it will allow annexation proceedings to begin. We are requesting Council's approval to add this item to the September 5th consent agenda, which falls within the required time period.
Thank you, Ms. Cardenas. And are there questions or comments from the Council on this? Council President Forsyth.
Thank you. So it wasn't clear to me whose jurisdiction this plot lies within currently.
Right now, it's unincorporated Kane County.
It is unincorporated. Okay.
Yes.
And then, what sort of notice are we doing, given the tax implications this will cause the residents in that area?
What kind of notice?
Notice of like
so
they can start planning.
This the way the annexation by petition works is that the owners of the property, they request to be annexed by the city of Redmond, and we've had a meeting with the proponent, which he owns 8 of the 13 parcels, which represent 63% of the whole area. So to be annexed into the city, you need to have signatures by 60% of the owners of the assessed value. So he just needs like a couple of signatures to be able to move forward with the annexation. So we met with him and we talked about the tax and the comparison with on how the tax that they pay now will compare to what they would pay. And I also have like a table I can forward to the Council if they're interested to see the comparison.
Oh, that would be really interesting. Yeah. And then, so it'll be more than just that one person though. That'll be.
Yes, it's actually right now there's 13 parcels, but 8 dwelling units right now.
Okay. Thank you.
And for those in the listening public that we'll want to circle back on that process. It's actually on page 5 of our packet, so folks can follow those steps. Awesome. Yes. Other questions from the Council? Councilmember Fields.
Is there any history here that we should be made aware of? Has this ever come to the city before? Is this something we expected to see?
Well, the way the annexation works right now by petition is that the owners come to us. We don't do like outreach, but there's been interest by some of the owners before in this specific area, but it wasn't the person that had the majority of the parcels, so they need that 60% to be able to annex, and it hadn't been met before.
So there's been an interest expressed.
Yes, but nothing formal. Nothing formal until right now.
Okay.
Yep.
So the city does have at least some dialogue or conversation with the people in the area, whether it's formal or informal?
Yes, actually, last year we got two questions from different people about this annexation, and then this one, which is, they actually filed a notice of intent.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I meant to acknowledge that we were joined by Councilmember Anderson as well. Councilmember Carson.
Thank you. So do we expect any kind of situations with sewer and having to extend further down to service these customers
So
as we
once
annex?
we also talked to the proponent about that, and once the area is developed, they have to update the sewer. Not right now, I think it's septic.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, typically, if they do development, they'll have to,
Yeah.
or obviously if their septic fails, but they'll have to get on the sewer. But
Yep.
I'm curious about how far down the main already goes, if it would
Well-
serve them readily, or whether we're going to have to dig
I
up
would
the
have to
street.
look at the maps. I can probably provide those if you're interested. We
I
could
think
look at
it would be helpful to understand that dynamic, because that's really, both sewer and water are the two big things that we
Yep.
will have to provide. If they're on wells, then,
Yep.
you know, they may want to switch to city water, and obviously septic is problematic in our area, and that area, as it densifies, it,
Goes down.
yeah. So, okay, yeah, that'd be great. Whatever information you can forward to council would be great on that.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll forward the table with the tax and the map with the sewer lines.
Thank you. So given the schedule for August, I would just encourage everyone who has further questions on this to be in touch with staff over email, because so that we can meet that September 5th, because it is a timely matter. Okay. Are there any objections to this item going to consent, given the information we have today?
As long as we see the.
As long as we see the follow-up and folks have a chance to answer their questions.
Perfect.
Thank you so much. Awesome. We will see this on September 5th, or plan to see this on September 5th. Thank you. And we'll switch over to our Public Works items. So item number 2 is acceptance of the 2023-2025 Pollution Prevention Assistance Interagency Agreement. We are joined by Chris and Aaron Moldver and Tali. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm Chris Stenger, Deputy Director of Public Works, here to introduce Aaron Moldver, Environmental Programs Manager, and Tali Grulich, Program Administrator who manages the Pollution Prevention Assistance Agreement with the Department of Ecology. They're going to give you an overview of the 2023-2025 Pollution Prevention Assistance Program Agreement and answer any questions that you may have. And I hand it over to Aaron.
All right, thanks, Chris. Good afternoon, council members. It's great to be here today. The Washington State Department of Ecology Pollution Prevention Assistance Interagency Agreement fully funds a program administrator position in Public Works for the 23-25 biennium, which started on July 1st for ecology. Redmond is eligible to receive $301,824 in funding, which fully covers salary and benefits and a few other program elements. The city's partnered with Ecology since 2011, and we've received over $1.4 million to provide technical assistance to businesses on proper hazardous material handling and disposal, and to support businesses in switching to using safer chemicals. Technical assistance focuses on ways businesses can reduce the chance of hazardous materials being released into the environment, with a focus on aquifer and stormwater protection. Free resources are available to Redmond businesses through the program, including secondary containment and spill kits for hazardous materials. Also, businesses that switch to safer chemical alternatives are eligible for reimbursement through Ecology. So some highlights from the 21-23 biennium. We completed 300 inspections through this program to multiple business sectors, including auto repair, manufacturing, and dry cleaners. We provided 20 free pollution prevention tools, such as secondary containment and spill kits. We issued and resolved over 75 environmental issues. Examples include things like spill response plan development for businesses, to helping businesses find disposal options for hazardous chemicals. We worked with businesses to remove and properly dispose of over 360 gallons of hazardous materials and move more than 1,300 gallons of hazardous materials into proper storage. And then this was really cool. At Ecology's request, Tali also mentored 3 other PPA partners from other jurisdictions. So they had new PPA partners coming on board, and Ecology likes to pair them up with a seasoned veteran of the program, basically, to show them the ropes. So she spent some time with 3 other folks from 3 other jurisdictions during this last biennium. So with that, we'd like to answer any questions you might have about the agreement and ask that the 23-25 Pollution Prevention Assistance Interagency Agreement be added to the September 5th council meeting consent agenda for approval. Thank you.
Thanks, team. Questions from the council? Councilmember Fields.
How many months is it? 24 months?
2 years, yeah.
So, and starts and ends?
Starts on July 1st and ends on June 30th.
Okay, great, thank you.
It's weird, it overlaps our biennium, which kind of makes it hard, so we do a little bit of guessing when we prepare our budget, but we always assume that we're going to get the full funding to
Yep.
cover her position.
No, and I remember the discussion back in the budget, so. thank you.
Yeah,
Perfect, all right.
thanks.
Other questions from the council? Awesome. Well, Tally, especially, thank you so much for being here with us. I wish we had more time so we could actually talk to you about your cool job today, but thanks for joining us. We do appreciate you. Yeah.
Go out with me if you'd like.
There's can you turn on your mic, actually? Yeah.
You are welcome to come do a visit with me if you're interested.
Awesome. So any council members welcome to reach out to Tally. I really appreciate that. Wonderful. We'll have this item on the September 5th consent agenda. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
And Deputy Director Stenger, I think we're gonna keep you here because we're gonna transition to item number 7, as was announced at the top of the meeting, just to make sure we get all the action items. So item number 7 is the approval of the consultant services agreement supplement 1 with Petite Engineering for the Avondale Road Preservation Project.
Thank you, Councilmember Stewart. Good afternoon again. I'm here to provide a overview of the consultant supplemental agreement to support the Avondale pavement rehabilitation. To support construction, I'm joined with Steve Gibbs, engineering supervisor, who's filling in for the project manager, Joe O'Leary, who's out of the office today. Project scope is about a half mile of grind and overlay. Several spot repairs of curb gutter sidewalk around catch basins and median islands. The project will reduce vehicle lane width slightly to establish a 1.5 wide buffer between bike lanes and vehicular lanes. The consultant contract includes design support, which is RFIs, change orders, and clarifications, construction administrative support, which is inspection, material documentation, grant compliance. Contract amount is included in the project budget and accounted for in the current approved CIP for the 23 and 24 biennium. And project-specific restricted work hours during weekdays 9 to 3 on the northbound and 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. on the southbound. Portable message signs included in the contract to provide notices and updates. And then for the citizens, we'll provide a project door hangers will be deployed in advance of the construction. If approved, we'd like to have this on consent for the September 5th business meeting, and I have Steve Gibbs here to answer any detailed specifics for the project.
Thank you, and thank you for being here, Mr. Gibbs. Questions from the council? Councilmember Fields.
Give me some detail on what a buffered bike lane is.
Sure, this is a new approach we're implementing. I think this is going to be our first installation. It's just basically giving more room between the vehicle lane and the bike lane. So we have our standard 5-foot wide bike lane, and with this 1.5-foot buffer, it gives the bike user a better experience, especially on a busy road like Avondale.
So it's really just a matter of space and more
And then
white or
some
green?
extra striping, wide striping between the cars and the bikes.
And is the intent to give space between bikes and cars, but also maybe a little more space between the road and hazards on the road, meaning dirty gutters and berry bushes sticking out in your
Sure, that does
face.
give
and-
them some additional space to maneuver around if there is some debris in the gutter.
I'm going to be very interested in seeing this design as it is completed. I think this will be an important piece of information for the council, so I hope that you intend on, once the design is done, that you'll bring it back and, at least for informational purposes, maybe not for approval purposes, share with us this, as you put it, a new approach. So I'm very interested in that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Fields. Council President Forsyth.
Thank you. And just to be clear, buffered is paint, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And space.
And space, paint and space. Got it. And then I can't recall the whole scope of this project. Is this the entire length of the scope of this project?
No, we divided the Avondale into 3 projects. It is quite extensive, heavily traveled. So this is the first of 3, and it goes from basically just north of Union Hill Road to 90th Street.
Okay. And then so it'll be the second phase, which is that middle gap.
And then we'll go from 90th to about, I think it's 109th, and then ultimately to 116th.
And the bike lane improvements will go the entire route.
That's the plan, yes.
Thanks.
Deputy Director, could you speak to the need for this supplemental? How did that arise?
Yeah, so this is kind of normal for what we do. We have the design consultant on board to bring us through design. We do the bidding, get a contractor on board, and then we assess our workload with staff. And they normally come in to give us some design support, which would be the change orders and the RFIs and design clarifications. And then if we need additional support, in this case, we're going to have the consultant supply an inspector, and then maybe some general construction administration support with some of the RFI or the grant compliance and materials documentation stuff.
Because these are federal dollars.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a little over $1 million in federal highway money on this project, and so we have the very rigorous grant compliance process with WashDOT and the feds.
I appreciate that. Would you anticipate a need for another supplemental on this project, or does this probably put a button on it?
This would be it.
Okay, great. Other questions from the council? Any opposition to having this item on consent on the 5th of September? No, okay, great. I think we'll see this on consent then. Thank you so much for being here.
Have a great
Appreciate
evening.
that. We're gonna go to something a little new now. We're gonna go to item number 3, which is a report from council members Field and Kahn about their trip to the National Association of City Transportation Officials Conference in May of this past year. So I turn it over to the two of you. Thanks.
Well, thank you. Thank you. So I want to thank Councilmember Stewart for putting us on her agenda. I know that this is the last meeting of the month and appreciate the time. Also want to quickly thank Council President Forsyth for standing behind this and making sure that we did in fact go. I think it was a great experience. And thank you, Vanjie and Seraphy, for both attending and for supporting this meeting. So just real quickly, a quick overview of who the National Association of City Transportation Officials are, NACTO, and what the Denver conference was. This is an association of close to 100 North American cities, and their main interest is in, well, their mission, I'll just read their mission, is to build cities as places for people with safe, sustainable, accessible, and equitable transportation choices that support a strong economy and a vibrant quality of life. 2 things I took away from my time at this conference. 1 is I became a big fan of NACTO, and 2, I became a big fan of Redmond city staff. The conference in particular had 1,400 transportation planners, engineers, policymakers, and others from over 200 cities across North America. There were 130 speakers, in all of the breakout sessions and workshops. And included was the, I'm sure I'm not pronouncing the name right, but Charlene Bott, who is the administrator of the Federal Highway Administration, and Jennifer Hamady, she's the chair of the National Transportation Safety Board. And in her speech, quote that stuck out for almost all of us was, "I'm here to recruit you to a new front in the war on traffic deaths, a safety revolution, one where you help the NTSB push for change and hold our federal and state leaders and others, including me and the NTSB, accountable for actions and inactions." There were numerous examples of city projects on display throughout the week, and included projects from over 50 cities. From the Northwest, there were Bellevue and Seattle had displays there. There were 86 walk shops, including walk, bike, scooter, and ride transit across the Denver region. One of the walk shops that I attended highlighted a major multi-million-dollar renovation that included innovative loading zones, in other words, curb levels, safe intersections, ADA parking designs, and affordable travel for people in wheelchairs, hearing impaired, and people without sight. It was an amazing afternoon on that on the walkabout. The primary focus of the conference was to swap ideas about projects, problems, funding opportunities, and showcase individual city successes for both the present and the future state of urban transportation. And I would like to hear from the other three participants and what their takeaway was.
Yeah, well, thank you again, Council President and Council, for letting us attend this, and of course, our amazing staff for also coming, and I personally really enjoyed, as well as Councilmember Fields, for bringing this forward and I guess creating a new opportunity for us to learn about transportation and sustainability, and to learn from other cities and hopefully bring some of that back here in Redmond. Personally, I would say the biggest takeaway I had from this conference was being able to see, I mean, hundreds, thousands of cities, governments at every level, federal, state, local, working towards the visions of, fighting climate change, working towards safety and for equity as well, kind of embedded in a lot of that. And I think that was one thing I heard a lot from the organization itself, was really bringing in equity into their transportation lens. And also just hearing from all the different presentations as well, how they would embed issues where, for instance, micromobility, I know that's one that we're talking about now even more here in Redmond, but bringing in an equity lens to say, how are we bringing scooters in a cost-effective, accessible, and safe means of transportation to underrepresented communities, or those who are more disconnected from public transportation, but those who rely on it more, for instance, right? And kind of creating some of those plans and really integrating our transportation into the communities that we actually serve, kind of leading that people first. Ultimately, I would say being an elected official there was also interesting, because it was largely a lot of staff that were there, and at the same time, it gave me an appreciation for the staff we have, public works, transportation, kind of all the folks who work together to kind of create our infrastructure, really, and also for all the rest of the staff across the country that are doing this work every day, right? The ones who kind of have those visions, that bring that courageously to their government bodies, to their elected bodies, and say, hey, we need to re-envision our, let's say, bus to rail to scooter system. How can we make that more regional? How can we integrate all of this? Listening to kind of all these different cities and staff who can create that vision, make it palatable to their communities and meeting their needs, and then also bringing it to their electeds to ask for policy changes and budget changes. And I think that was one thing I heard a lot was, I took away a lot was, there's a lot of great ideas, there's a lot of great solutions, there's not enough money, and sometimes the policies don't fit that vision for an equitable and safe transportation world. So as an elected in the room, I'd be like, okay, let's put money behind this, right? And I can, that would be my question for folks is, okay, well, how are you making this happen? And as we know, right, we'll hear about grant funding or, one-time funding or pilots and projects that would get a lot of these great ideas off the ground. But there've been a lot of great ideas like our scooter and, rideshare programs that are happening, micromobility programs, but everyone's kind of coming to that wall of we're at the end of our pilot, now what? How can we've learned a lot, we've benefited a lot, we've made some changes, how can we keep this going? And as an elected, I'm like, okay, this is where I can, speak to that and feel empowered in my role as well too. When budget comes around or when staff comes forward with, proposals for long-term projects, to know that, okay, this is where our money is going. We can trust that this is actually working, and knowing that other cities is working for other cities too. So it's not just us. We're not in a silo. It's not just Redmond or Bellevue or Kirkland in a bubble. And then, let's see, what else? I would say, and then just having the opportunity to collaborate and learn from other cities, kind of build some of those bridges and connections was really valuable. There's cities like Portland, for instance, they have, Bike Town, I think is what they call it, is, kind of a play on Nike Town, where they have leveraged a public-private partnership with Nike to support their micromobility and, first, last mile infrastructure. To create some of that funding. And honestly, it's very impressive to see the type of plans and the maps that they have that have connected so many different parts of the city of Portland, especially starting with those who are historically underserved, communities of color, lower income, to create that as an essential service for those communities. And then, again, leveraging that when the money might not exist in government itself, right, to kind of create that infrastructure. So, but yeah, being able to kind of see that's happening here in the Pacific Northwest and just, short hop away, and kind of having that opportunity to hopefully collaborate, especially knowing that the Pacific Northwest is the, third highest user of lime in the world, something like that? 1 week. Yeah, okay, well, 1 weekend. We did it once, we can do it again. So those opportunities to collaborate were really amazing. And I would love to be able to see Redmond continue to be part of NACTO in the future and to build some more of those connections and be more engaged and hopefully bring back more ideas to the city of Redmond in the future. And I will just, last note I'll say on this is, I've not to put you all on the spot, but I've already seen some of the ideas and, opportunities that I heard at the conference already brought to us from our amazing staff. So I can tell you right now that your money was definitely worth it because we're bringing in a lot of that vision and collaboration, those ideas, and I'm sure those connections that you guys have already made to our policies and to our transportation. So I look forward to hopefully hearing more of that and hopefully bringing more of those ideas to Redmond. And I'll hand it back to Steve for, I think, more examples or maybe to hand it off to staff.
Do you guys want to say anything at this point?
I guess it's a little bit appropriate since it's NACTO. I'll just close it off. I think both Seraphi and I appreciated being able to go and spend some time with council members, Fields and Kahn. We did spend a lot of time. I just really appreciated the time to get to know them, and we had hours of conversation, and I'm not kidding. And so Seraphi and I talked with several people from several places across the country, and I received we both shared that we were there with several, with council members, and we got a lot of like, wow, that would be so awesome if we had council members here at the conference too. So I would like to say that I was inspired a few years ago when I first went to NACTO in Seattle, and I think that's the biggest takeaway is the collaboration and the innovation that the conversations start. So everyone loves the idea of Vision Zero, but there's probably never enough resources and enough money to get to zero in the time we want to get there. So every location and every jurisdiction has a unique story, and the idea is we need to develop the strategy to get there. And I think that's when that 2.5-hour conversation was probably the time I think that was worth the trip. So I hope that starts more conversations in the future.
Thank you, Vanjie. I just want to add a couple of quick things. And Vanjie's being polite. They were 2.5 hours of debate. Good debate. But there was a couple of very prominent themes, and I think a dichotomy that I think is really important to point out here. When we heard the large, the keynote speakers talk, they talked about the solving of global issues, and one of the quotes was, "U.S. streets keep getting deadlier. It doesn't have to be that way. Our transportation system is failing us." And you're not going to get an argument from me from that. Every day I see somebody get killed, a pedestrian or a motorcyclist or a bicyclist, and I see way too many. It just breaks my heart. So solving, but the dichotomy part was that we heard all this inspiring talk at these large meetings from national leaders and state leaders. Then you get into the breakout sessions, and as Vanjie described, or as Councilmember Khan described, and Vanjie to some extent, it was a different tone. There was more of a struggle. How do we do this? And the passion and the commitment and the intelligence is astounding. This was primarily a lot of professionals with a real sense of what their purpose is. And they know what they're about. But there were people struggling. They've had Division Zero for 10 years in San Francisco, and their deaths continue to go up. So the question is, what do we do in action? How do we actually complete the vision? And, another theme was we work better when we work together. Well, that's a nice phrase, but what that means is how do we work with the federal government and make sure that money and that infrastructure money actually gets spent in a way that turns the dial and makes people safer and makes people happier and more secure. So the point I'm trying to make is the city of Redmond, in my view, I'm going to speak from my perspective, needs to understand that this is, in fact, an important transformation. We need to actually not just go along for the ride, no pun intended. We need to be very proactive in making these streets and our city safe in the future. So that's all I want to say, other than I think the four of us would agree and advocate, and maybe council leadership could take this up, that we become a NACTO, that we are part of the NACTO membership, and that we become a NACTO city and participate in the events and going forward. And I'm seeing both staff members shaking their head yes. So I'll let it go at that, and if you want to ask any of us questions, I think we'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, all of you, for sharing. We're a bit over time for this item, but are there questions, burning questions from the council? I don't want to cut off a healthy discussion. Burning questions, Council President Forsyth.
Not really burning questions, but quickly, I loved what you said from the NTSB person, and I'm wondering if there's an opportunity there for us as the policymakers to potentially come up with a letter to the NTSB talking about how vehicles have gotten larger, because that's a big part of why the traffic deaths have gone up. So I think there's an opportunity that if the two of you would want to work together with me, maybe we can draft a letter to send off. And that's one quick opportunity that we could take to take a small action.
So just a quick comment, I agree with the city communicating, and I'm happy to start with council. I would love to see it come from the council and the mayor. It would carry a lot more weight if it came from the entire city, so.
Yeah, love that.
And if I could also just respond quickly, that was actually a point that was brought up during her speech, and that was actually a request of the cities there as well too, is like to ask for, us to speak up, kind of collaborate and advocate for better kind of car design changes that would promote better car safety and decrease car deaths as well too, and promoting alternative transportations as well. So you are probably right on board with, what the conference wanted you to say. So thank you.
A quote I'll just add that I remember her saying is electric cars are not going to save us because they're heavy and will continue in that way. So I just thought I'd add that in there.
Thank you. Other burning questions on this topic? Points of conversation? Well, thank you so much for the report back. Really appreciate it, both of you. Let's continue the conversation, yeah? Okay, cool. Thank you so much. And I should have said all the remaining items on our agenda tonight are informational. Item number 4 is the DEI internal and external assessments overview with Jan Harrison. And she is making her way up. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. I'm glad to join you this afternoon, well, evening now.
Thanks for extending your workday.
Well, I wanted to follow up to the conversation that we had on June 20th at the Committee of the Whole Public Safety and Human Services meeting. And at that time, I shared with you the DEI internal assessment survey that occurred in 2021. And there were some questions about the external assessment material, and also the DEI listening summary report internal as well. And the information that I found is that the DEI external assessment that was forward-facing to the community, it had basically a low participation rate, meaning 14% of the population of Redmond, which is at 76,732, 14% participated, so there were 108 residents that actually responded to the questionnaire. And so also the DEI listening summary report that was internal was had a 5% participation rate of a staff of 779. And so looking at that in terms of outcomes and how to use the data that was collected, because the population sample was so very small, it really didn't reflect and really reveal enough information that can be actually applicable. So looking at overall, coming into this position and having these surveys conducted, overall there were 3 internal, the assessment, the listening session, and external. I think it wasn't, even though it didn't net what we were hoping for, I do think that it was time well served in the sense of it gave us a starting point in terms of how to move forward, and understanding that DEI, in doing DEI in a very meaningful way that you want to be sustainable in creating organizational health, it allowed, I think, to be able to connect with the READY program, working with Anita Page, which I think has been phenomenal. I think that part of the reason why some of the previous assessments were not as fruitful as they could have been is because how you engage and bring people in to be able to have them participate and share how they feel. I think people were, an approach was not, I guess, appropriate for the climate at that time. And so coming with ready, with leading with respect, is a refreshing and a more leaning in and engaging and welcoming type of approach where people feel comfortable, because regardless of what your positionality is, talking about diversity and isms and inclusion are tough conversations, and having people, asking people how they feel, that takes a lot of trust and openness. And I think that, so having done that work prior and then now doing it with Ready, I think it was times well served, and it got us to where we are now. And I think building DEI on the Ready program is a phenomenal opportunity, and I feel that it will allow us to really go deep and not experience apathy, and really create sustainable change and reimagine work life in the city of Redmond. So.
Thank you, Ms. Harrison. Who would like to kick us off? Council President Forsyth.
Thank you. I really loved the recommendations page in the materials provided. Something that strikes me about this conversation and the conversation we just had was the opportunity for staff and council members to connect and to actually bond and have those deeper, more meaningful conversations. And that was something that I saw throughout responses in the materials. And so figuring out whatever opportunities we can that allows more of that relationship building and those opportunities for us to have conversations in a more casual, relaxed environment, and have opportunities that, currently we have a structure where we don't necessarily feel like we have access to staff members. So figuring out how we can make those opportunities be more abundant, I think, is what I've heard from many of my colleagues, and I myself would love to have that opportunity. There were some things that were a bit concerning in the responses, but also things that I very much also that resonated with me. So I know you have your work cut out for you, and we're here to help however we can. I think just keeping the conversation open and honest and coming from a place of respect, as you mentioned, is the way to go. So however we can help, just let us know.
I will. And I really have a great deal of confidence in the Ready program, in the sense of how do you start the conversation and really bring staff in.
It's okay. Oh. They're warming up out there.
Oh, okay. All right. I thought maybe it was the mic or something. That too. But in terms of how do you bring everyone in, understanding that their lived experiences and their apprehensions are real, and that none of us created this system. I don't think anyone sitting in this room was around in the 1600s. And so it's a flawed system, a seriously flawed system that we inherited. And so how do we lean in at this time to rectify it and reimagine better ways of living with each other and growing and being the best that we can be in a real meaningful way. And so Ready allows us to do that. And I think the Ready program that really advocates and demonstrates the importance of organizational health is invaluable. And what does that look like? Creating a healthy environment, a culture, a corporate culture that fosters and allows conversations and new ways of doing. And Ready allows us to do that. This work is hard. DEI is a tough space to really connect, not only how people are feeling and their connection to their work, but how to integrated within strategies that actually are good for business. And so there's a lot to do, but I think Ready gives us an amazing opportunity. But I don't think that that would have happened if you hadn't done the heavy lifting and maybe realizing how the challenges that really are a heavy lift prior. So prior to Ready, it wasn't time wasted at all.
Councilmember Fields.
So anytime a conversation has the words trust and learning in it, I immediately recognize that it's much more of an art than it is a science. And there is no, we learned this and now we can do something. It's that we learned this and now we have an opportunity to learn more.
Yes.
And I appreciate everything that you just said, and I just wanted to reiterate what Council President Forsyth said. I think that you have a council that's very committed to the work that you're doing. I want you to trust us, and as we move forward, we will do whatever we can to make sure that you are successful and this program is successful and that the city is successful in this area. So thank you.
Well, thank you as well. And I'm available. I mean, I think some of you have had one-on-ones with me, and I've really enjoyed the opportunity to share my passion and my commitment to this work, and hoping that that will help you feel comfortable and confident that my commitment is real and that I am looking to create transformational change that can be sustainable.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and hop in, seeing no other hands. First of all, thank you so much for coming back. It's just great to be in dialogue with you on a regular basis, because that transformational change is going to take a working relationship that we're just beginning to build, and I really appreciate that. So the external assessment that was shared with the council in this packet, I believe this is the first time we've seen it. The work is over a year old, and as you said in your opening remarks, it's considered less valid because it didn't have a high response rate. I'm curious what would have been a statistically appropriate response rate in order to make us feel better about that.
I think because when you're looking at a staff, we're talking about this internal, or are we talking external?
The external assessment is the one that's new to council in this packet.
Yeah. I think that, with a city of over 75,000, I think having at least a 45 to 50 would have been substantial to get a perspective in terms of what people are thinking and feeling about the space that they live and work and enjoy time in.
Well, I drink from a well of optimism. I think people know that about me, but we can't get voter rates at that level. So those are really high rates, yeah. So that's interesting. So here's why I bring this up, though, because although I read in the memo that the city was feeling less empowered by some of the results, I had a similar response to my colleague who lifted up some of the recommendations, because the items that were shared in the external assessment feel very authentic to the conversations I have around community. So although it was a small sample size, although it was in a pandemic, and although it was remote and mixed in with a bunch of other things, I do think they're valid, and I wonder how staff have used this information. Has it all been just kind of left and not considered valid, or have teams been able to reflect on the data?
That's a work in progress, because my position being opened in the transition and then moving forward with Ready. So now it's about how do we use the information that we collected prior to inform us moving forward. I think that in terms of surveys, I think that when you have being able to, for example, utilizing our community resources, working with nonprofits and using those opportunities and those relationships to get people to participate in surveys. Also, if you're looking at people who are historically marginalized, doing a survey may take time away from their work. And if they're working hourly, maybe they don't have that type of flexibility. And so therefore, how do you work with nonprofits in the sense of getting people from disadvantaged communities to participate in and volunteer in a survey? And so, understanding that volunteerism is rooted in philanthropy, and philanthropy is rooted in the Savior Savage model, basically that people of privilege have the opportunity to do these extracurricular type of engagements that, being able to pay someone who's we're financially challenged, that would increase participation, and that's about reimagining community engagement. So it's
So you're telling me to keep drinking from the well of optimism, because we're
at least for a little bit.
We're gonna like methodically get there. I love that, and I think what's here and the time that our community members spent in giving us this information should also be valued. So I have a couple of notes here. It's a little dense, so I'm going to look at my screen for a moment. But I really do hope that the communications team spends a little bit of time with this, because there are areas where we are making really good strides on some of the items that, affordable housing coming up over and over and over again. That's a priority of ours too, and we're doing a ton of work on it. And I know that sometimes, for instance, we know from our survey, our statistically valid survey of the city, that the most powerful communication tool we have is our print newsletter, our quarterly print newsletter. So I would really urge the communications team to use the information from here about what is important to folks, and cycle that back with the editorial calendar. So housing being an example, where consistently our work on affordable housing can be shared over time throughout that piece, not just one flashy story one time, but like consistently over time. And then on the inclusion pieces, for instance, something I hear so often is that the newsletters really reflect a family-friendly city, which is very true. But how often are those families, especially outside of the month of June, in our print newsletters ever reflective of same-sex couples or LGBTQ families just throughout our media, not because it's a special month or a celebratory month in any manner, but just because it's important to communicate that they belong to through the things we're already doing. So these are just a couple of the examples. I also saw some feedback in here that could be really helpful for the economic development strategic plan, particularly around some of the business areas. So while I hear you on that, it's not the results that we paid for and we wanted as a city. First of all, the council invested in your role. We're really happy you're here. And the data, it does have validity. And it should, I do hope that we are able to return to it and the staff are able to use it to inform next steps in partnership with you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to minimize it in any shape, form, or fashion. And the data that we did have collected, that will be reviewed and analyzed and incorporated. So it is valued, but in terms of a broader perspective from a larger segment, it wasn't what it could have been.
Understood. And thank you. Are there other comments or questions from the council? Okay, wonderful. Well, I'm really excited for you to continue coming back, and I do have one request, maybe like moving for the next time that you're here, maybe we can start talking about what you might need from us over, like if you're back in September, or October, what would it look like for us to support you through the end of the year, or through maybe the spring, or, just to help us kind of build our work together. That's an idea I had coming into this conversation today.
Okay. Well, I do know that the council is going through is working with Anita, and so if I can help facilitate that, your journey on that work, I think that would be helpful to make those connections. So again, let's keep talking.
Cool. Thank you so much.
All right.
Really appreciate you.
Thanks.
Awesome. We have 5 minutes left and 2 items. So let's see. Item number 5 is Fire District 45 update with Chief Adrian Shepard. Thank you, Chief.
Good evening, and thank you. Yeah, good evening, council members. I'm Fire Chief Adrian Shepard, and it's my pleasure to be before you and just give you an update on the goings-on with Fire District 45. As you are aware, earlier this year, along with other agencies, the two other agencies actually, the Redmond Fire Department responded to an RFP for contract for services. Now, the proposal was a 5-year contract for amount of $7.2 million annually. And under this contract, the Redmond Fire Department would absorb all but one employee, but this position is still being negotiated. However, we do expect to absorb approximately 20 people from Fire District 45. And as part of this RFP process, we attended several meetings with the fire commissioners. We've had numerous discussions with them. And after careful deliberation, the fire commissioners, in a 2-to-1 vote, selected Redmond to explore the possibility as a contract for services. So what's in it for us, really, is that partnering with Fire District 45, we understand that they have some specialized equipment that we can certainly capitalize on, e.g. Water tender. So that means that we don't have to actually come to the city and ask for this. In addition, we know that they're technically sound as a fire agency. They're really adept at wildland firefighting. They're also adept at water rescue, which is something that we currently have, but we are not as strong as they are. So we see many benefits in that. We also hope to realize an administrative cost by doing this agreement. Year 1, no real cost savings, but years 2 through 5 with the contract, we believe that we will have significant savings in our administrative cost. Earlier today, we had a productive meeting with the staff of Fire District 45. We wanted to get some clarity on what their concerns were. Again, I would say that the meeting was fruitful. As we ended the meeting, there were a lot of things given out because I think we gave some clarity as to what it is our intentions are. Tomorrow we meet with the commissioners of Fire District 45, and we have set up a schedule through August for a couple of meetings. It's our anticipation that we will solidify an agreement by January 1st and actually start absorbing those members into the Redmond Fire Department. So that's a brief overview and update, and I make more than certain to come before you as things evolve and keep you updated on the goings-on. And with that, I'll open up to any of your questions with our 5 minutes.
Questions from the council? Well, Chief, I walked in with a couple that you were able to answer, including the what's in it for us, as you put it. I appreciate that language. One thing that I thought about as I was going through the packet was that we won't see first quarter financials on the current department until September. So by the time we have our next check-in with you on this, we might have a different set of questions, just having seen a little bit more about how things are actually going. But I appreciate you walking us through some of these things today. And it's exciting to hear both on the wildland firefighting and the rescue. It's summertime, so those are both on our minds, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so those added capacities. Okay, so thank you so much for being with us, Chief. I don't see any other questions from the council.
Great, thank you for your time.
Yeah. And item 6 on our agenda tonight is the Travelers Insurance Property Insurance 15-month renewal. And we are here joined by our Finance Director, Kelly Cochran. Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. I have with me Irene Bunchbach. She is our risk program coordinator and has been for many years. So if we have detailed information or detailed questions about our policy, she's our person. But in general, I'm here just to give you some information regarding our policy renewal. We were asked to provide this information by council leadership prior to the renewal date. I think many of you on council will remember last year our policy renewal was a little bit eventful. We didn't just renew with Travelers as we had for the 12 years prior. They were actually moving away from some of the lines of coverage that they provided us, and so we found a new provider. It did cause council to need to pass a resolution allowing us to enter into an interlocal agreement to have coverage from CIAW, which is Cities Insurance Association of Washington. And also council needed to pass a budget adjustment in order to allow us to pay what we needed to for 2022. This year is just a renewal, nothing exciting or surprising. Cost is within the range that we expected. The one change that we do have is to our renewal date. So previously, our policies have renewed on September 1st. Our broker, as well as CIAW, is recommending that we move to a December 1st renewal date to get us in alignment with the rest of the industry and their customers. And so we are moving forward with that right now. So we'll be coming to council in two parts. Today is just to let you know about the travelers portion, the amount or the portion of our coverage that they still provide, which is limited to our property. We will come back to you in November with the CIAW policy prior to its renewal in December. So we'll hit you before anything is effective. We did receive final numbers from travelers just this afternoon, so thank you for your patience with that. The increase is 8.7% for a 12-month period, which was less than we had anticipated. We had kind of expected about between 10 and 12. So the increased total is $28,000, again, just for the 12-month period. The total premium of the policy is $370. And that is because this policy will last until December 1st of 2024, at which time then both of our policies will be set to renew on an annual basis, December 1st. So no surprises. Things look good there. We have no indications that anything will surprise us with the CIAW policy. We do expect increases, but nothing exorbitant like last time.
Thank you so much for the for coming back, checking in, and then the thorough explanation. I will kick it off with Council President Forsyth.
I just wanted to say thank you for bringing this to us. I know this was a request that council leadership had brought forward as a reminder that we wanted to see this before it was due, as there was that big surprise last time, and you answered all my questions in your description. So I appreciate you bringing it forward and the very clear, detailed responses to what all was included.
Great. Councilmember Fields.
So 8% increase, a little bit higher than inflation. So is there any drivers that are in our control?
Not that I'm hearing. At this point, what we are hearing from our broker is it's really just an increase across all lines of business in the industry, increasing claims. So right now, that's really where our pressure is coming from.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Any other questions from the council? Seeing none, thank you so much, Director Cochran. And Irene, thank you for being here with us. We really appreciate all the work that you do. And finally, one item good of the order, join your neighbors tonight here on the City Hall campus at 6 o'clock for our Rocking on the River concert series. Tonight's talent includes Rockfish and Friend, classic rock that kicks brass. So everybody enjoy. We'll also be having a council meeting in here at 7 o'clock. Thanks. We are adjourned.